Howdy, folks. It's David Cobb. I have the honor of being Jill Stein's campaign manager for the Stein-Baraka campaign, on to the recount, and now heading into Occupy inauguration. I have the honor of being joined actually literally in person by Eric Rydberg. Eric?
Thank you for having me, David.
So Eric is an interesting person. Well, I'll let him speak for himself, but we're going to talk a little bit about his own personal journey and how he came into the space that he's in politically. But before we want to begin, I want to acknowledge that today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And, you know, one of the things that always gets me is to watch how King has been so thoroughly sanitized by the neoliberals or the corporatist, militarist who control both the Democratic and the Republican Party. Because, you know, it's okay to have a dream. But when you start making the links between capitalism, white supremacy, empire, militarism, that's when you get killed. And I think that it's worth pointing out that the speeches that we hear time and time again from Martin Luther King Jr. are cherry-picked sort of feel-good moments that don't talk about systemic exploitation, systemic oppression, and the interconnectedness and intersectionality. But for my money, it is the speech at Riverside Church. It is the speech that he gave on the conference on new politics, where he literally called out the Democratic Party leadership. That's the King that I like to remember. So, folks, we're going to jump right into a conversation. I see that people are already coming. Hey, Colleen, glad you're here. And New Jersey in the house. That's awesome. Love and support from Tanya in Maine. This is fantastic. So, here is the thing. Eric, I'm going to let people like you introduce yourself because folks have not met you before. Tell us about who you are.
Okay, hey, I'm Eric Rydberg. I'm from Northern California. I'm Kashiapomo, American Indian here. I ran for district delegate here in District 1 for Bernie Sanders this year. Worked really hard on his campaign, learned a lot of stuff, kind of, you know, real crash course in politics, to watch Bernie skyrocket like that and to you know, be on that boat.
So, Eric, before you go any further, I want to make it clear. So, what was your party registration before Bernie Sanders came along?
I was independent. Well, in California, we call it no party preference, right?
So, yeah, look at the camera. Yeah, so you were no party preference, which means you weren't a member of a political party.
Correct.
And how active in terms of electoral politics were you?
Not active. And so, yeah, I kind of started paying attention because my house got wrapped up in the recession. And that's when I started doing some studies on economics and history and things like that, specifically the Depression and, you know, how these things come about. There's some striking resemblances between the recession that we went through in 2008 and the Great Depression. And many of the same exact banks were involved with very similar practices that caused it. So that's kind of how I came about, and then I saw Bernie Sanders come out talking about reinstituting the GlassSteagall Act that Bill Clinton had repealed, and which is pretty much the core. That was like the tipping point when the recession really started kicking in, right? Right,
and so for you, if it's fair to say, Eric, what I'm hearing you say is that you became to get politicized and more politically aware. Because of your own experiences through the housing crisis as it affected your family.
Yep.
And then you started to look around politically. You saw the connections between the corporatist, how the money and the banking system works, and then you found out about Bernie Sanders. Is that fair to say?
That's very fair to say.
And then, so what did you do next whenever you found out about that?
Okay, well, I studied the Great Depression quite a bit. My house went from $50,000 in 99 when my parents got it and when the GlassSteagall Act was repealed to $230,000 in about 6 years. So it's a massive spike, right? Or what they call, you know, a fictitious or, you know, boom in the market, right?
A bubble.
Yeah, big bubble. And obviously it popped. And my parents had refinanced when it was high, and now we're, you know, owe more than the property is worth currently. So that just got me looking into it. And then here comes Bernie Sanders. And when I found out, it took me years to find out that it was like the GlassSteagall Act that actually was the trigger for that. And then here comes Bernie Sanders talking about reinstituting the Glass-Steagall Act. And not only that, he had the endorsement of the Apache and the Couchiching and the Navajo Nation. So that really like perked up my attention, because it's usually not something that, Native Americans have a history of not getting involved in federal politics, and you can understand why. So that's when I really started to get interested, and I went to go do a voter registration. Found out about this district delegate thing. For the first time in my life, I registered as a Democrat to participate in that. And, I only got to be a Democrat for a few months because all the fraud and everything that was happening. By the time we got to California, as soon as I saw Dr. Cornel West have to abstain from the platform, I'm like, that's it, man. You know what I mean? Like,
So you were one of those people who completely politically, like, I'm turned off, I don't pay attention, screw it all. The housing crisis affected you and your family. You got involved. Bernie inspired you. Got involved. Saw how the Democratic Party leadership completely undermined and delegitimized Bernie, and basically, stole the primary process. So then, what happened next for you?
When I saw Dr. Cornel West abstaining, that was my trigger, and I started looking into the Green Party, because the platform is the same as Bernie's. It's actually a little bit better, right?
We think so.
Yeah. Well, Bernie was talking about free college tuition. You guys, Green Party talks about free college tuition. They talk about we talk about cancel student loan debt, right? Because let's be honest, you shouldn't be spending the next 20 years of your life when you graduate college paying back student loan debts. You should be working on getting a house and a car and doing, moving on with your life. But instead, we're handcuffed to this economic, slavery, really, of having to, in order to get educated, we have to go in a massive amount of debt.
So, Holly, yes, I'm not a millennial, obviously, but Eric is. And I do want to say, Eric, Julie Verghese, who is awesome, the senior producer, has been capturing some of the comments. Y'all keep them coming, because except for the trolls, we don't actually respond to trolls, except for to say, hello, trolls. Gucci, 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 Gucci. Let's scratch the trolls on the chin. One of the things I say, Eric, is I always appreciate when trolls are here. Number one, it's keeping them off the streets, right? They're not bothering anybody else. So that's actually a good thing. But keep them coming. And I want to say this, Eric, a couple of things. Number one, that's fantastic. So we got a shout out from Colleen, who says that she saw both of us in Berkeley when we were together.
Yeah, Berkeley.
Right? Actually, remember, Eric, we toured across California.
Yes.
We did like 3 or 4 events together. So
even when you were in the UN, you called in when we did the Humboldt rally. Yeah.
It's true. From the Humboldt rally, I was speaking in New York City. Mm. So thank you so much for that, Colleen. And Herbert says, I love it when you say that when you start making the comments about intersectionality, that's what gets you killed. Bill Newman says, small town Texas shooting love right at you. Thank you so much, Bill. I'm actually a small town Texas boy myself. I grew up in San Leon, Texas. You're rural Northern California, right?
Oh yeah. I grew up in Paradise, California, which is actually came from Pair of Dice. It used to be an old gambling town. The largest.
No, you're making that up.
Nah, literally, the largest gold nugget ever found was, when you talk about the Wild West and all that, like that's where I grew up. Like,
all right, so you got a couple of rural country boys here coming at you on MLK Day, talking about Eric's own awakening politically. I do want to jump back over because Kat McHugh says, David and Jill Stein, please check out Steve Grumbine on Real Progressive. He's talking about the truth about modern monetary theory and the reality of economics. We can do the Green New Deal without raising taxes. So I can tell you I'm learning about both sovereign money, fractional reserve banking, the debates between the American Monetary Institute and modern monetary theory, the difference around public banking. So stay tuned, because I envision actually using our live stream to have a discourse, not a debate, not you're right, I'm wrong, or I'm right, you're wrong kind of thing, but really talking about some of these issues and really developing the literacy around economic theory. Liza says, we must unite the many demographics the way Martin Luther King was doing to end poverty and inequality, to do good through structural change. What are your thoughts, Eric?
Well, that's, one of the amazing things that I witnessed out at Standing Rock was just, Black Lives Matter was in camp. There was Palestinians in camp. There was Tibetans in camp. The clergy. I mean, everybody from all these movements. My particular camp that I was in, Occupy Camp, was like Socialist Alternative, Veterans for Peace, Green Party, Bernie-crats. I mean, people from, all kinds of different movements were coming together, and that's what Occupy Inauguration is really about. It's not about going there to just say, Trump's what he is. Trump is not the problem. Trump is a system of a symptom of the problem, and the problem is the system. So what we're talking about is how to overcome that. And when you have two corporate parties that are owned and funded by the very same bankers and pharmaceutical industries. I mean, we just witnessed that with Bernie getting, stabbed in the back by the Democrats again. 13 Democrats voted against his pharmaceutical amendment, right? So when you have the same exact corporations funding both parties, it's like, my family's from I have family in Santa Rosa, Oakland, and stuff like that, and it's it's like having the Raiders on offense, the Raiders on defense, and the Raiders reffing the game. Like, who do you think's really gonna win, right?
Right.
So the Green Party is the only party that doesn't accept corporate money. You know what I mean? And if you follow the money, it's a term we're going to be hearing a lot. Follow the money. It tells you who you support, right? And the Green Party is the only party that doesn't have money invested directly into the Dakota Access Pipeline via their donors. It's the only party that doesn't have pharmaceutical lobbyists and all that. So follow the money with us. Who do we support? The people, right?
So, Eric, I do want to let you know that you get a big shout out from Linda Curatulo, who says, thank you for getting involved into politics.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me because after being inspired by Bernie, your next sort of big action actually was not in a traditional electoral politics, but you headed out to Standing Rock. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I went to Standing Rock with my dear friend Haji Wharf from the Lake County Green Party. Once again, Bernie Sanders supporter. The work I did with the California Green Party through the Stein Baraka campaign as the state coordinator was building. We put together a brand new 10 county parties here in California, all made up of Bernie supporters and such. And Haji was one of, she's my Korean, half Korean, half Norwegian sister, and we headed out to Standing Rock together. I was there for about a month. I was there during the Backwater Bridge incident. I had my megaphone. I've been toting around this megaphone with me all year, through the Bernie stuff and all the Jill rallies, and I happened to have that with me that night. And so, they moved. There was two. I'm sure you guys might know the story by now, but there was two trucks on the bridge that the cops had locked to the bridge, and they were blaming camp for having them there and blocking the road. So somebody from camp went up there with a diesel truck and pulled one of the trucks off the bridge. At that point, it was immediately cushion grenades. There was no waiting period. It was water cannons, cushion grenades, and tear gas from the very moment they pulled that thing off, and there's video to show it. So I got there. I was up at the casino because you can't get any phone reception, or the highest hill in camp they call Facebook Hill, because if you stand there for 30 minutes, maybe you can get a post out or something, right? So I was at the casino using my phone. By the time I got back, it was already going. People were getting rushed off the bridge with injuries and stuff like that. And so I brought my megaphone out there, and we were doing chants and trying to talk these cops down from using the rubber bullets and concussion grenades. And we had our indigenous brothers and sisters singing over the megaphone. And, they were using that LRAD sound cannon, which is, it's illegal to use in Palestine because it's considered torture. But here in America, they can use it on our citizens, apparently. So I was out there all night till about 5 in the morning until they ran out of tear gas and concussion grenades and water. And, it was we kind of like broke their spirit just by staying out there all night. And at the end of the night, we were even doing sled races down the side of the hill because they sprayed so much water on the bridge that it frozen solid. And, the kids were using these lids from the totes that they brought their clothes in. They were using them to, block the rubber bullets and block the water cannons. And
then toboggan.
And then toboggan at the end of the night. So the last thing I did before the megaphone died was we lined up like 12 people on the side of the bridge, and it was like, Standing Rock racers, take your places, And we were doing races, and it was like, and Red Jacket from Standing Rock comes in first place, and we were all laughing and having a good time. But the truth of the matter is, in order to get to that point where the cops were done being violent on us, Sophia Wilansky basically got her arm just completely, blown away.
So this is serious business out there. So what is going on right now at Standing Rock, Eric? I mean, several people in the live stream have said, what's the current status of that pipeline project?
With the Army Corps of Engineers, they didn't grant the easement when all of our veterans showed up, our Veterans for Peace, and so it kind of goes to show that they'll listen to vets, and thank you, vets, thank you. But Trump has already told Kelsey Warren that he's going to grant the easement once he comes into office. So it's a temporary.
So I do want to ask a hard question, and maybe you can help us understand it, because Harold Onefeather says, what are you doing to help understand the social structure that led up to this insanity? What are its implications? Are you aware that Standing Rock ST, I don't know what that stands for exactly, but ST is pro-oil and tried to shut up the Hunk Papa for saying so?
This is something that a lot of people don't know about Standing Rock. Is there's this little group of 20-year-olds called the International Indigenous Youth Council.
Woo woo! We gotta give it up.
IIYC. What's up? I spent almost all my time out there with them. So yeah, it was the youth that went out to the pipeline and said, no, we're not going to do this thing. And then when the DAPL security started getting violent,
that's when Dakota Access Pipeline.
When the Dakota Access Pipeline security started getting violent on the youth, that's when all the adults everybody started showing up, started rearing their horses up at the cops, and then the incident with Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! Happened with the dogs and the mace and all that. And at that point, that's when it completely.
And of course, that's when
exploded.
Jill Stein and Ajamu Baraka went out and engaged.
And then within 48 hours of Jill Stein being out there, Obama, made his first step in to halt the drilling.
It's almost like when the Green Party forces leadership of the Democratic Party, they might sometimes do the right thing. They don't do the right thing because it's the right thing, but they only do it if they are actually pressured, forced, or are guilted into doing it. So listen, I also want to give you a shout out because like you, Eric, Brett Dillon says, I dim exited and now I'm a green.
Right.
So thank you so much for that. Jed Saunders writes back and he says he just got back from Standing Rock after a month out there in the winter, but he's seeing posts about a group approaching the drill pad. Do you have any comment or knowledge about that?
Yeah, I was looking at that right before I got on, so I don't know more than you do, brother. So, you know what I mean?
So the point is that we've got to really be watching it. I do want to take advantage to let folks know that we are pretty sure that, Eric, we do know that at Occupy Inauguration, you're going to be there. There's going to be a huge contingent from Standing Rock. We, on this very Green News Network live stream on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. East Coast time, we're going to do a movement marathon titled Inaugurate the Resistance. So Trump's first, we're going to protest him. We're protesting now. We're going to protest the inauguration. Day one of his inauguration, we are in resistance. And one of the segments that we're going to lead is actually on Standing Rock and the fossil fuel complex. And Eric is actually going to be the host, putting together an indigenous panel there. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so I'm going to have Adam Elfers from Defund DAPL. I met Adam in camp. I'm just going to quickly talk about...
Tell us what Defund DAPL is and then hit it.
Okay, Defund DAPL is a website you can go to, Defund DAPL, DAPL.org. They give you a step-by-step instruction of how to pull your money out of the bank. They give you a letter to give to your bank manager saying why you're doing it, and they ask you to go outside your bank, take a picture of yourself at the bank, and tag your bank at Wells Fargo. So far, like I was saying, I met Adam in camp. Adam was telling me we're putting this thing together. This was a couple days before the Backwater Bridge incident. After that happened, I met Jordan Sheridan, and then Adam came to me a couple days later, and we ran into each other on Facebook Hill, and he said, "I did it, man. We got the website up and going." Jordan happened to be up there.
TYT, the Young Turks.
TYT, the Young Turks, and I was going to do an interview with him, and Adam was there. I was like, "Man, you guys interview this guy with this defund Apple, right? So Adam does an interview with the Young Turks, and within 2 weeks they pulled out like $18 million from the Bank of America, Wells Fargo, J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, the big guys. You see the spider web. There's a whole lot of banks, but we're really targeting the big guys. So right now they're at like 42 million that they've pulled out, from divestment. And so Adam's going to be there talking with me. There's also going to be Jacqueline from the IYC, the Youth Council. She's going to be speaking with me about the state of Standing Rock, and I'm hoping to have some other leaders from the Lakota Sioux to be there with me as well. And so what we're talking about now is, Standing Rock is like the first domino. We were able to get them to stop the easement. That proves that people power can overcome money power, right? Because it's a $3.8 billion pipeline, and Kelsey Warren paid the Morton County Sheriffs $22 million to go out there and put Susie Z's eye out with a tear gas canister and give my buddy Efren Montalvo a seizure with a concussion grenade to the chest. Not to mention what happened to, Sophia Wilansky, and 167 people got hypothermia, and 300 people got injuries from the rubber bullets and concussion grenades, and the LRAD sound cannon makes you feel like crap for days. But anyways, what we're doing, we're going to be talking about frontline to frontline, making a coalition of all the pipeline fights. Right now, there's the same company, Kelsey Warren and Energy Transfer Partners, is doing Trans-Pecos Pipeline down in Alpine, Texas. I got to give a shout out to my brother Luis down there. Machivas, hey brother, keep up the fight down in Camp Trail Deer. In Florida, we have Sable Trail. In New Jersey, there's the Algonquin pipeline, and it seems like they always, every time they run a pipeline, it's got to be through a Native American reservation. It's kind of ironic. They push them out on this land so far away, and then, just like what happened in Standing Rock, the white folks don't want the pipeline through their town, so then they push it over to the res, right? So that's what we're talking about now, and it's so important to me specifically because my Yurok and my Hoopa, my Karuk over here have a pipeline that's going to be going through our Klamath River right here in my backyard. It's a liquefied natural gas, hashtag no LNG, hashtag no Klamath pipeline, you know what I mean? So I'm going to go and do everything I can with Adam and all of my brothers and all these pipelines to help fight it with the Veterans for Peace. We're going to go to Flint, Michigan. We're going to go to the Navajo and do something about their water supply with the uranium mines. And then afterwards, please, brothers and sisters, come to California and help me stop this Klamath pipeline.
So in other words, what Eric is describing is an idea of using direct action to stop the harm, abuse, the destruction that's happening at the point of impact. And let's be clear, we also need to go to the point of decision making, right? So it's not just the tip of the spear, but it's the spear itself and the shaft that's coming in. And ultimately, we need to change the point of assumption about how we're actually living. One of the things about the Green Party is we're serious, straight up, nonviolent revolutionaries. And we think that we need to restructure society, which brings me to the question that Brett Dillon asks. Brett says, look, the Dems don't seem to have learned from their mistakes. It seems like business as usual for them already. Eric, why do you think that Bernie has shown so much loyalty to a corrupt political party rather than joining the Greens and solidify its platform and its seriousness as a political party? Really quickly, what are your thoughts there?
All right, don't hate me, guys. I wasn't happy about this when I found out it either, you know what I mean? Bernie used to talk all the time about how this country needed a third party. You couldn't get him to stop talking about it. And then in 1991, he tried to do the single-payer healthcare with Hillary Clinton. He's never said a word ever since, and he's been caucusing with the Democrats for a long time. He campaigned for Bill Clinton on both of his elections, even after NAFTA, right? So, Bernie told people not to vote for Ralph Nader. Bernie told people not to vote third party this year. You know what I mean? It hurts me because the reason I voted for the guy is because there was an I next to his name. But everything that he's doing seems to show this extreme loyalty to the Democratic Party. And, I understand you're 74 years old. You've been in this a long time. You don't want to start all over again or whatever, all right? But I'm young, and I know that the two-party system is completely corrupted. I mean, just look what happened to Bernie right now with the pharmaceutical amendment. You know what I mean? We're going to keep.
So here's how I think about it. Look, first of all, Bernie's policy platform positions are fantastic. That's wonderful. But everybody is allowed to be wrong sometimes, and Bernie is wrong about his commitment to the Democratic Party. Because I'm going to name it and say it out loud. The leadership of the Democratic Party is playing liberals and progressives for chumps. Because the leadership of the Democratic Party is taking their money and their marching orders from corporations, Wall Street bankers, and the transnational corporations. But you know what? There's a corollary to that needs to be said out loud too. And that is that principled conservatives are being lied to and sold out by the ruling elite of the Republican Party, who are taking their money and their marching orders from the same damn corporations, transnational corporations, and banks, and Wall Street America. Ultimately, what we've got to do is that principled liberals and conservatives might have differences of opinion on policy proposals, but the question of who rules this country, there is a ruling elite that are playing the Democrat versus Republican game, which is bullshit. I'm just going to name it. It is a crock. It is a sham. It's a farce. We've been hoodwinked. We've been bamboozled. It's a shell game. That's the reason I think, with all due respect to Bernie Sanders, he's just made a mistake. And that's okay. We'll still work with him. So Sarah asked, will the Green Party be having demonstrations in D.C. throughout the weekend or just on the 20th? The answer is we'll be doing stuff all through the course. Go to disruptj20.org. There's stuff going on the entire time. And Saturday night, please go to our website and get a ticket, because you'll see a fantastic lineup. Jill Stein, Shama Sawant, Chris Hedges, Tim Canova, Chase Iron Eyes, Daryl Moak of the Green Party, George Friday of Move to Men. Hey, George. All in a panel discussion talking about what is to be done. Get this. Being co-hosted by Socialist Alternative and the Green Party, the Movement for 99%, and the Stein-Baraka campaign. Reds and Greens finding ways to come together and work together. Really excited about that. So go ahead, Eric.
Can I say one more thing about Bernie Sanders, right?
Yep.
So I ran for district delegate. We studied contested conventions, every single one in history, right? We knew what we were in for. When you go to a contested convention, there's 2 rounds of voting. There's pledged, which you get elected to represent Bernie, so you have to vote for Bernie. Then there's another round. It's called unpledged, where you can then flip, let's say, in this case, from Hillary to Bernie, right? So all of us studied that. All my California delegates, we were ready to convince all the Hillary supporters. And when the DNC chair gets fired for fraud, you've won the contested convention, okay? Other people have won contested conventions on less. So Bernie suspended the rules in the first round, and we never got to get to the second round where he would have won. So this is my question to all my Bernie Sanders supporters, okay? Like, you know, whatever your theories are on why, it doesn't make sense when you have all the cards on your table with the fraud and everything to suspend the rules and hand it over to Hillary Clinton on a silver platter when all we had to do was get to that second round and we never got the chance. So I don't understand that. I've been trying to wrap my head around it. If somebody can please explain to me how that makes sense, because to me, there's only one reason Bernie Sanders didn't win the primary, and that's because he suspended the rules of convention and handed it over to Hillary Clinton on a silver platter.
I got to say, Liam, you're absolutely right. Bernie did open a lot of people's eyes, and that's fantastic. We're appreciative of that, but we've got to go. Well, so we can say thank you, and we go further, because it's not about Bernie, it's about us and building a mass movement. You know, at the end of the day, I think that this is really important. I want to give you a chance, Eric. To your knowledge, what is happening at Standing Rock right now?
There's been some meetings, from what I understand, about, you know, since the easement's on pause, this is my assumption, okay, I'm not speaking.
Very quickly.
They're going to move off of the land that, you know, the Army Corps stole from them, because it's not officially reservation land. They're going to move back across the Cannonball to LaDonna's land, which is like Rosebud Camp and Sacred Stone Camp. And kind of like, I'm assuming this is like a good faith, hey, if you're not going to grant the easement, we'll move back over to our reservation land, you know, but as soon as Trump comes in and he grants that easement, you better believe we're all going to be back, and we're going to be back bigger than ever. We are not going to let you destroy the Missouri River. There's an endangered fish called the pallid sturgeon in there, and we are not going to let it happen.
We are not going away. We're getting larger, stronger, better organized every day. So here's the thing, y'all. If you are anywhere able to get to Washington, D.C., come and join us for Occupy Inauguration. If you can't join us, make sure to come on to this Facebook live stream from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, a movement telethon. Leaders from Black Lives Matter, the Peace Movement, the Women's Movement, Standing Rock, the fight against the prison industrial complex, the fight for voting justice. An amazing program is being built for you. And we'll be live streaming that performance with Jill Stein, Ann Shama Sawant, Chris Hedges, Chase Iron Eyes, Tim Canova. And on Sunday, a progressive summit where we think about how we can continue to move together. I want to thank you, Eric.
Yeah,
thank you so much, brother. I want to thank you. And remember, share this. Get involved in your local Green Party. When you register Green, you vote for peace every day. You vote for justice, ecological sustainability, and democracy every day. Live green, be green, register green. Peace.
Aho.
Bye, y'all.
Mini Wachoni.